What is up, everybody? I am John McLean with FPS Holsters, and on this video, I want to go over the differences between the original STK 100 and the new changes and upgrades that Island Armory have made to this aluminum-framed striker-fired lineup. Quick question before we dig in. Have you ever owned or even fired a polymer striker-fired pistol and ever thought, this thing could be a little bit better? Well, if that rings true, follow me and hit subscribe. I break down real-world upgrades and hands-on impressions all the time, and I don't just parrot statistics. Alright, let's go. On the original STK 100, you had a two-piece clamshell frame. Now, functionally, it worked. I never had a single screw come loose on any of mine, but visually and mentally, I think people always just questioned, what if a screw backs out? Well, the updated STK answers that with a single piece aluminum frame. No more clam in the chowder. The single piece aluminum frame advantages are an increased rigidity, adds a little bit more weight, and reduces frame flex under recoil. Now that changes the recoil impulse. And practically, that means that the muzzle flip feels more controlled and follow-up shots settle faster when you compare it side by side with anything polymer. So the aluminum frame adds mass. That mass dampens recoil and reduces muzzle flip. More weight equals less belt recoil for the same momentum. I mean, that's not marketing, that's just simple physics. Now, another thing on the original STK 100 is that the grip texture was lacking, for a better word. Like, I personally used epoxy and silicon carbide to improve traction and make it slip way less in my hands. It's also a little big. If you've ever had trouble hitting the magazine release under pressure, then you'll kind of know why that matters. Well, the STK now comes with a redesigned grip. Slimmer profile, more aggressive checkering on the front and back straps, and removable side panels that also are a tad bit more aggressive too. There are relief cuts around the magazine release, and the overall grip geometry just feels a bit slimmer, which makes hitting the mag release much easier for people with medium to smaller hands. The magazine release is ambidextrous as well, which gives left-handed shooters functional control without having to swap parts around. However, the reduced mag release size on the right side was an interesting choice. It's also not reversible. I'm not quite sure why that was the final decision, but those decisions are a little above my pay grade anyway. Now, the original STK 100 had a rear sight that was a part of the plate that you removed if you wanted to install an optic, and it was fixed. So no real field adjustments were possible if your iron sights were off, and no backup if your optic decided to go down. Well, the STK 150/200 comes with taller, more traditional sights that co-witness with red dots. Now, co-witness means that the irons line up with your optic, so if your dot ever fails, you still have usable iron sights in that same sight plane. Now, taller sights also help when you run a suppressor. They give you a usable sight picture, even when the slide profile changes because you have a big old honking can on the front of the gun now. If you're not a fan of the stock sights, the new models accept common Glock-style aftermarket sights, which are everywhere and pretty easy to replace. I mean, that's a practical benefit for folks who like to customize. The next thing to note was that the original STK 100 was pretty closed off to the aftermarket upgrades. You couldn't even swap barrels if you wanted to. What I can say for sure is that you can swap barrels without much issue on these new STKs. I happened to install a threaded barrel from Tactical Kinetics, and it dropped right in with no break-in required. No gunsmithing, no timing issues. It literally just went in the gun and ran no problem. And that kind of plug-and-play compatibility just makes life easier. Note, if you change anything on any firearm, always function check and do a basic live fire check at the range. Like, pay attention to headspace and extractor engagements if you're installing anything that is non-standard. And if you don't know what any of that means, then please consult with a gunsmith. For range use and tactical setups, the weight is a win. It smooths follow-up shots and makes the gun feel more planted. For everyday carry, the aluminum frame does add some weight, but not as much as you might think, and I should know. Why? Because I've carried the STK 200 around all day plenty of times, not only with a red dot, but with the TLR7 weapon light. So for a range gun, a duty gun, or a carry gun, it really is a great option for all-around use. Now there are a ton of polymer striker-fired pistols, and RIA's approach gives you a metal chassis for a round polymer pricing, and that should appeal to folks who want metal feel without a big jump in cost all day long. How much? Well, you know I can't talk about price without risk having to deal with stupid people that think they're smart, so please just use Google and see for yourself. The new STK isn't just a tweak, it's a meaningful rethink. Single piece aluminum frame, redesigned ergonomics, better sights, and true aftermarket friendliness give it way more ticks into the positive than the original STK 100 did. Now, for gun owners and folks who like to customize, the new models are a clear upgrade. For carry purists who like lightweight packages, then this lineup may still really surprise you without adding that much bulk to your EDC. Alright, well that's it for this one. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Drop a comment and tell me which upgrade you'd like to see me try next on my STK 200. I'm John McLean with FPS Holsters, and don't forget that if you're gonna miss, at least look good doing it.